Yeah, keyword significant impact. Yeah, I've got a lot of Facebook friends. I don't think I make a significant impact, but yeah, if you're somebody who's got a lot of clout with people, you know, you can get the word out. So as a company, I want to know who you are, because if you say something bad about my company, well, that's not good, because people might not buy my product because you said something bad. But if you know, if you say something good about my product, then that's great for me too. I want to know, honestly, I want to know both. And if you did have a negative experience, since I think you're an influencer, I'm going to reach out to you and go, hey, you know, sorry you had a really bad experience with my product. You know, one of the things I want to do here is reach out to you. Can I give you a coupon or something? What can we do to rectify the situation? I've heard some instances where consumers have been able to go out to Twitter and get better customer service than if they called into a call center for the same company. So companies are actually actively out here looking for people who are complaining about them versus waiting for you to call and complain to them. So just to let you know what the power of social media is, and I've seen it in real time. Brand threatening information is big. Again, I just mentioned legal issues. BP oil spill is a big one. I was on a threat tracking team. We followed a lot of negative buzz for BP. So we cover a lot of international companies too, as we all know. They're from the UK. Different types of data, which we'll get into some of this. Trended analysis, so how's my buzz trending over time? Is it going up or down? You want to know that, especially if you say you launched a product, you want to know if more people are talking about it. What if you launched a sales campaign? You want to know if more people are talking about your product or purchasing your product. In some instances, if you can get a hold of sales data, you can run correlations. Look at a sales trend versus a buzz trend. You can see if there's any type of correlations there. Sentiment, are people speaking more positively or negatively about my product? Also discussion topics, you can run through the messages again in kind of a bottom-up fashion and see what people are talking about. And then just a couple of other things, you can get some core audience demographics. A lot of this is subject to what they've put on their Twitter profiles or their blog profiles, but a little hard to get to in some cases, but it is possible. And then qualitative data. And then again, a lot of this just kind of it's just part of a bigger realm called search engine marketing, which you can get into. There's a whole other realm there. If you get into like search engine optimization, knowing what people talk about, you can get a hold of your website design team and put certain keywords in your website, make it pop up higher on Google, things like that. So a lot of fascinating stuff within search engine marketing, in particular social media. So any questions so far? So I'm going to run through a couple of quick pros and cons here for automated data collection. This is by far probably the better of the two, in my opinion. But there's pros and cons to both. Obviously, the money issue is probably a little bigger. Usually, you gotta have some pretty good pocketbooks if you want to access some of these really good tools offered by companies like Nielsen. Fortunately, they don't give that stuff away for free. Time. It is possible to collect more information if you have access to technology. For instance, in the time it took me to probably collect 30 messages, I could probably collect 3,000 messages very, very quickly. It's as simple as just putting in a keyword and hitting a button and getting it back about 5 minutes later. Downside is a lot of these automated technologies do require the maintenance of databases. For instance, even Nielsen couldn't get to every single site that's out there. There's just way too many. So a lot of times a client would come to us and we would have a kickoff call with them and we would say, you know, what are some of the main sites that you guys are looking to track? And then if they listed X, Y, and Z, well, if we didn't have Y in our data content system, you know, we would get in touch with them and say, okay, we have, you know, these 2 sites, we're going to go back and get this one. And then in some cases we'd have to delay starting the project till we got that site in, or we'd have to communicate if we couldn't get a site. There are some instances where some sites are just not possible for us to collect. So being upfront with the client, honest with them, transparent, it's just a critical thing in the nature of market research or in the business market research. Labor, so basically both of these, you know, you just have to know what you're looking for, so understand social media, understand and you know what are some of the things that are important. You know, if you have a particular automated tool, know how to use it. Although sometimes the training can be extensive, just depending on the type of software that you're using. And then finally, data accuracy is kind of a big one. Again, you're using just data mining techniques for automated. It's just a matter of putting in the right words. However, sometimes technology it doesn't really work when it comes to picking up certain certain topics. For instance, if someone says, I just purchased a new Lexus. I thought it was bad. Now it's bad. Bad as in bad product, or is it bad as in cool? So that's where you run into some problems. So there's pros and cons of both of these. I would say definitely on the time issue, it's definitely a lifesaver. There's plenty of projects that, just this one here in life is worth the investment.
Ron, to your point about understanding everything that you find and seeing it in the right context, some of these students, when they were doing the BlackBerry little exercise, they found quotes like, "BlackBerry is the greatest innovation ever, ... not, said no one ever," or something like that. So you have to really look at the context of things.
Yeah, usually when we at Nielsen, when we're looking at automated sentiment, we have an algorithm set up. So they would have just a database or dictionary, I guess, of say 2,000 or 3,000 words. They have identified as negative words, some vulgar words, some words that most people use, like when someone says, that's stupid, or the word hate. They would have this set up, and if they saw that word within a certain proximity of the brand, so if I'm looking up Coke and someone says hate, and it's within, say, 15 words of Coke, then the technology would say, okay, that's probably a negative message. There's always some that are incorrect. Again, someone might say, I think that product's, again, like the word bad is kind of probably the best one I can think of right now. But in that particular instance, they're saying it's positive. But this automated technology will probably score that one as a negative message. So it's just being aware that there are some constraints to automated technology. And then again, a lot of it comes back to communicating that with the client, just saying, giving them a clear understanding, hey, by and far, most of these messages are good. And I would say even in my own personal use of automated technology, about 80% of the messages were really good. It's the 20% that you just kind of had to go and really dig through it and try to really clarify what the consumer was saying. Getting into manual data collection, which is a little bit more of what I'll show you guys. There's a lot of cool free online tools. Has anybody heard of Topsy? It's a pretty good site. I'm not sure about Topsy's kind of a cool site just to go and get a high level view of what's going on in the social media realm. You can look up pretty much anything. Let's see what's going on here. This is my favorite one for last week. You guys did see Obama's response to that, right? He sent out a tweet right after that, and that got picked up by a lot of people. It's basically Obama in a chair. So the Democrats had a pretty good comeback to this one. But yeah, you can just go through and you can see, past hour, what's the big one? Past 6 days, so 7,827 posts about this topic. Big one. So it's a real quick way to get some pretty good numbers.
And is that just social media that's scrubbing, Topsy?
Yep.
So it'd be blogs, Facebook, tweets.
Yeah.
Now,
some of these are media driven. I would say Huffington Post is a very liberal content site. But yeah, I mean it's their blog that came up on. So usually it's going to pop up the most relevant stuff first. So again, from an influencer standpoint, they're looking at the most influential sites. But it does bring back Twitter data as well. Talking Points Amendment, that's a pretty good blog. Nation. So you get a mix of everything. Tumblr, that's a consumer post. So again, you get some pretty good consumer feedback in addition to some fairly prominent sites as well reporting on the topic. But Topsy is a great site to give you a really good high level analysis. You could actually use it. You're not going to be able to copy all 7,000, but I would say if you want to gather data. If you want to use this site, you could probably copy, all of the top 10 links for the first 5 or 6 pages and put them in an Excel spreadsheet. That would be a pretty good way to go. So again, some of the cons is just limited access to resources. You can't get all 7,800 messages manually. It would take you won't graduate. So just you gotta have to get together with Dr. Levin on this one and just figure out what's a decent sample size. If you have if you can get 100 messages from Topsy, 100 messages from, say, a Google blog search, and if you can get any data from a Twitter search whatsoever, which I think Topsy will give you some, that might be your best place to go to get some of the data that goes back a little bit further. And if you can get all that in a spreadsheet and you can randomize it in Excel, then what you can do is, okay, you got a list of 300 messages, you can randomize it and maybe pick the first 150 and go through and score them. While not perfect, you have some randomized data, you've got a pretty good sample size, and you've got enough data to where you can come up with some decent qualitative findings. So, again, time-sensitive issues. Manual is really good. And sometimes, like threat tracking issues, it's quicker to use something like Google Alerts than it is to actually go out and pay for a tool, because most tools have a delay of about 3 to 5 days. So there are some times where it's actually better. So if you're doing something for WNKU and you want to set up a Google alert and people are talking negatively about a topic, you can get that in your email box and then give it to Dr. Levin, and he can funnel it to the people at WNKU, and they'll give him a nice raise because he just told them about how to save their radio station. So all kinds of pros and cons. Again, labor, small-oriented teams can navigate this. Social media, they can landscape fairly quickly, but there could be some requirements. So your group may have to do a little bit more work if you're doing some benchmarking. For instance, I was able to get some data for NKU or WNKU from Nielsen. If you want to do a competitor, you'll probably have to go out and get that data on your own. Data accuracy, so topic analysis, sentiment. You can actually get better results, I think, if you read through the messages, because you're not subjugating your data to technology. You're able to go through and have a human perspective on it. The downside is you could have bias. So when you're reading through the data, try to make sure your researcher bias stays out of that. You don't want that contaminating your results. So, all right. But does anybody have any questions about pros and cons of social media from an automated versus a manual? In my opinion, when in doubt, go with technology. It's just a lot quicker, you get a larger sample size. Even if some of your data is a little off, you got enough of a sample size in most cases to sort of trump it. So those are probably the pros. And the cons for both. All right, so project limitations. Dr. Levin will probably make sure this is a big part of your project. I don't know what happened with that. Anyways, but basically, you're not going to have a lot of access to historical data, and you're probably going to be using a judgment sample, and that's just a non-probability sample where the criteria that you're using is going to be based on researchers' opinion. So in this particular instance, the sites I'm giving you are like Topsy. Those are ones that, I'm using my professional opinion to let you know that's a good site. Google blog search, that's a good one. Twitter. So these aren't sites that you're going to have a completely randomized data set. It's going to be a non-probability sample. Results from social media, again, they shouldn't be considered statistically significant. Data collection, it's going to be more qualitative in nature, so you're going to be reading through a lot of posts and a lot of messages. The goal is to take that content and then convert it over to something that's more quantifiable. And then again, just watch out for researcher bias, as I mentioned, and you're probably not going to have a completely probable sample. Again, this is just a book I mentioned.